How do you show interest in someone without coming on too strong or looking desperate? That's what we're going to get into today. Stay tuned to learn all the different ways to show interest in early dating, which, by the way, double as clues that someone is romantically interested in you. Welcome back to Dating Intentionally. I'm Talia, and I'm sharing no nonsense advice for navigating dating and relationships with confidence and ease, whether you've been dating for a while or you're just getting started. I believe dating can be fun, especially when you can confidently show interest in someone without stressing over coming on too strong or going over the top or anything like that. By the way, if you're listening to this on the day it comes out, happy Valentine's Day. I wanted to do this episode on Valentine's Day because this is typically a time of year where it's common to see or experience grand gestures of affection in dating. And the truth is, grand gestures are fun. But while dating intentionally and in long term healthy relationships, it's the little things that matter so much more. So, today we're going to get into showing you're romantically interested in someone early on so your actions align with your words and intentions without going overboard or doing too little and accidentally signaling that you're not into them. We're going for that Goldilocks effect here, not too much, not too little. There's a just right when it comes to showing interest. Before we jump in, I said on a previous episode that I would answer questions in the comments on Spotify, and I want to thank the one person who got the memo and asked me a question there. So the question is, how do you handle the let's just be friends comment? Have you ever gotten that comment from someone you're dating who decides that, you don't have the connection they're looking for or they're not ready for a relationship and they just want to be friends? Here's my take on this. You don't have to agree to be friends with someone who you were romantically pursuing and then decide that you're not a match. Like, I really believe in choosing friends with the same discernment in the way that you choose your partner. Maybe the stakes aren't as high, but you really have to think, what is the value of this friendship? What will this friendship bring to my life that's a great addition to my existing friendships and relationships? Do I even want more friends? Also, if you still have romantic feelings for that person that you're holding on to, being friends sounds like torture. That being said, I know there are plenty of folks out there who went on a date or two and then became really good friends. I know I had that experience in my early 20s dating in New York, made some great guy friends through dating apps. But if this question comes up, I recommend taking a step back and asking yourself if you really want them as a friend. Also, realize that some people are genuine in this offer and some people say this to let you down easy, and they have absolutely no intention of being friends. I hope this helps. Thanks again for this question. And if you want to ask a question for me to answer on a future podcast, you can leave it below in the comments on Spotify. And other ways you can connect with me are Instagram. I'm at dating.intentionally. My DMs are open for you anytime. You can also connect with me on Instagram at dating.intentionally. You are welcome to slide into my DMs. I read all of them and answer as many as I can. I'm also on YouTube at dating.intentionally, and every way you can connect with me is in the show notes. I love hearing from you. Okay, on to our main topic. When you think of showing interest in someone, what comes up for you? Maybe you're dating someone right now and the idea of showing that you're into them feels a little vulnerable, maybe a little exciting, maybe it feels like work. I don't know. Just pay attention to what comes up for you when you think about showing interest in someone. I think a common reaction to showing interest is fear. So let's talk about why it might be scary to do or say something that communicates your romantic feelings towards someone in early dating before you're committed. So the first reason is it feels like you're putting a lot on the line. Like the stakes can feel really high in early dating because again, you're kind of this is the uncertainty phase. This is the part of dating where we just don't know where each other stands and you're figuring it out, you're feeling it out. So if you're feeling like sending the text, showing interest, whatever it is scary, I encourage you to lower the stakes, right? Remember that you don't need this to work out, that someone who feels the same way about you would be thrilled to hear from you, to for you to initiate plans with them, for you to ask them questions and all the things. So just remember to lower the stakes and take the pressure off the situation. If you're feeling scared to show interest, think about what that means and think about how the right person would love to receive that affection from you. Another thing to keep in mind if you feel like a lot is on the line is to date the way you want to be dated. So if you want someone to text you back, to initiate plans, make sure you are doing these things too, right? This is reciprocal. Remember that you learn a lot by the way they react to you showing interest. So make sure you're doing it because that's more data for you. That's just more information for you to use in your decision of whether or not to keep going. Well, another big fear around this is what if it's not reciprocated, right? This is a form of rejection. If you show interest in someone and they don't kind of hit that ball back to you, it's a mini rejection. It doesn't feel great. I mean, I understand why, like, you're hesitant to doing it because you don't wanna face that rejection. Showing interest is vulnerable, okay? That's the fact. And if the idea of showing interest in someone who you're not sure is interested in you makes your stomach churn, I'd work on doing this because you'll build confidence in expressing interest without attachment to the outcome, right? By taking these small risks, you're actually going to build some resilience. Another fear is looking desperate or coming on too strong, or maybe like you're chasing, right? We don't want to do this. Showing interest isn't chasing. Chasing is when you continue to pursue someone who has shown you or told you that they're not interested in you or interested in a relationship in general, okay? Showing interest in someone who you're actively seeing and getting to know, who you want to know more, is not chasing and it's not desperate. And think about it this way: is showing interest to your partner desperate? No. And even though this person isn't your partner, there is like a way you want to show up that is going to be similar to how you will show up in a relationship. And we'll get into what is appropriate and what isn't. But like, this isn't something where you're withholding affection to the point you get into a relationship and then you give them all this affection and attention and interest. That's not how it works. And finally, you might feel fear around this based on your past experiences. I mean, gosh, I'm sure we all have a story where we experienced rejection when we showed interest in someone and it's painful. So I get why you wouldn't want to show interest to the next person if you've been burned in the past, right? That if that hasn't gotten you to where you want to be, I get why you're hesitant to take that leap. If this is your fear, if you've had some bad past experiences, I always encourage you to let new people be different, because just because someone hurt you in the past does not mean the next person is going to hurt you in the exact same way. So, if you're scared to show interest for any of these reasons, you're not alone. And I'm here gently encouraging you to break away from this fear by taking tiny risks and show interest. When you're lowering the stakes in dating and taking the pressure off the outcome of each situation, you can more easily take these risks. So, let's dive into ways you can do that on your next date or even like right now with the person you're currently seeing. By the way, what we're going to get into applies to everyone of all genders and sexualities. I'm not separating this out by what men and women should do. These are things we all need to be doing when interested in someone and trying to build a connection. What's an appropriate way to show interest in early dating without coming on too strong? So I asked the Instagram community what their favorite way to receive interest in early dating is, and as I read through the answers, it dawned on me that at the root of it all is just being able to communicate and show someone that they matter, they're seen, they're heard, and that you're thinking of them, even if the connection is new. That's all people want to see in early dating. You matter, I see you, I hear you, you're valued. And the way to do that is honestly really simple. Here are four ways. One, listening. Okay, just being present with them. Listening is being present. Being present means that you're connecting in the moment, and that's what we want. The second one is taking initiative. That means making time and space for them in your life. Third one is being thoughtful. That shows you're thinking of them, shows you're considering them. Even if you don't know them that well, you can still consider them. And the fourth one is consistency, because that's what builds trust and shows that you are reliable and that you can continuously show up for someone. This isn't about grand gestures or pouring your heart and soul into that person, right? It's just about showing up. And if that feels too vulnerable for you, if it feels too scary to initiate a plan, to ask them a question or share your thoughts, then it might be time to take a beat and ask yourself if you're really emotionally ready for the relationship that you want. Showing interest in a healthy, secure way is easier when you're more emotionally available. So, if your heart isn't in a place where you can handle showing up consistently because the idea of rejection is so painful, then you might want to direct more of your energy towards healing and working on shifting from needing a ton of external validation to giving that validation to yourself. And we'll get into that more in a little bit. Let's take a closer look at what showing interest can look like in early dating so that you're intentionally communicating that you like them and you want to build a connection without going over the top. All right, the first one is show appreciation. So this can sound like, I love the restaurant you picked, or I appreciate you giving me a heads up that you were running late, or thanks for chatting on the phone with me. Little things. When you feel genuinely happy about something they did or said, get in the habit of sharing that. You don't have to go on and on about how great it was and how your ex didn't do it and how much it means to you. Just say, Thanks for doing that. It reinforces that behavior, which is so important, and it makes their effort feel seen. Who doesn't want that? It also signals what's important to you and it signals that you're a good communicator. Another way to show interest without going over the top is initiating plans while also giving them space to initiate as well. So, this is a sticky one because I think a lot of people fear doing all the work when it comes to making plans, which is really important early dating, right? This is one of the main tools we have to show interest and gauge their interest in us. Follow through is a different story, but when it comes to initiating plans, I recommend aiming for a 50-50 ish vibe. So that means maybe you initiate a plan, then you step back and see if they do. Or if they initiated the first plan and you want to see them again, you kick off the second date. It won't always play out exactly like that, but I think it's important to aim for. Initiating plans can also be like asking for a phone call or a FaceTime, really anything where you're connecting in real time. It doesn't always have to be a date. Obviously, if you're the only one, starting plans to meet up, first check yourself to, kind of go through the history and be like, did I even give them a chance to make a plan with me or am I always jumping to do it? And also just try and step back and see if they, also initiate plans with you. I really believe that one person, usually the guy in heterosexual dating, driving things forward is outdated. And I think everyone wants to see more mutual effort in early dating. So no matter who you're dating, make sure that you are both initiating plans and stepping back to make sure they have room to as well. Right? That's the important little dance here. Another way to show interest in an appropriate way is asking questions, of course, but giving them a chance to ask you questions too. So, same with initiation. You want to make sure you're trying to get to know them and seeing if they're prompting for more information from you too, which, by the way, doesn't always come in the form of a question. Sometimes they'll say something like, tell me more about that, or just giving you the floor to talk and they're listening. But again, asking questions is super important. Like, if you on your next date, pay attention to how many questions you're asking versus how many questions they're asking. Start focusing on this because I think this is one really easy way to show interest that people don't do enough. It's really attractive when you show interest instead of trying to be interesting, right? Someone who shows interest is way more memorable than the person who just talks about themselves the entire date. Of course, this translates to texting too. If you're texting, obviously you want to ask questions that go beyond what are you doing today or how are you? So I don't love getting to know each other over text, but if that's what you want to do, just keep that in mind. All right, another way to show interest without going over the top is expressing enjoyment without overloading. So that will look like you saying, I'm having a great time. Talking to you is so fun. I'm enjoying getting to know you. These are all appropriate things to say in early dating that aren't love bombing. They're about the present moment, which is great. They're not about I can't wait to go on a trip with you and you've like only spent 2 hours together, right? That's like the love bombing territory. And please only make these comments if they're genuine, if you really feel like you're having fun. Lately, I've heard from friends who are dating that they'll go on a date with someone who says multiple times, I'm having a great time, I'm having so much fun. And then they never hear from that, which is so frustrating. Like, don't send mixed signals if you don't want mixed signals. So only say this if you really feel it. Everything we're talking about when it comes to showing interest has to be authentic. Like you're showing interest in people you're interested in. You are not going to do these things if you are not feeling the connection and not interested in having another date. All right, another way to show interest that is appropriate for early dating is flirty touches and light physical contact. So, the basics like a hand on the arm, an elbow or the leg, like a knee, holding hands, hugging, kissing, these are ways you can show interest in someone. Obviously, you need to make sure that there's consent. Make sure you're reading the room and their body language to make sure that they're open to physical touching. If they're pulling away from you or if they're stepping away, they're kind of getting out of your physical space, they're not interested in being touched. So just know that. And when in doubt, you can always be like, hey, I would love to kiss you. Can I kiss you? You can ask for consent for a kiss if you're like, you just want to be sure. And I get that. Another good way to show interest is calling them on the phone. Phone calls in early dating are so underrated. Like, stop texting, pick up the phone, and just call them to say hi. It can be so flirty and fun to chat for a little bit between dates. And I know if you're like a Gen Z dater or a millennial dater, picking up the phone to call someone can feel weird. And if it does, honestly, I still encourage you to try it because you've got to get out of your comfort zone and get more comfortable with it because it's a great way to connect. It's so much better than texting. And obviously, with this one, don't overdo it. Don't call to say hi every day unless you've both agreed you prefer that to texting, which is fine. Phone calls don't have to last hours either, right? It could just be like, hey, I was just reading this thing or just thinking about this thing. I wanted to say, hey, like, how's your day going? And just have a little bit of that chit chat between dates. It's a great way to keep momentum. It's a great way to stay connected and actually spend a moment together instead of texting, which is where you're not necessarily talking in real time together. And I've said this on the podcast a few times. Johnny used to call me all the time. I mean, in early dating, he called me right after our first date, like the day after, just to say hi. He would call me often. And at first, I was kind of like, this is different. I don't know how I feel about this, but I ended up really liking it because talking to him on the phone was just way better than texting. And texting him wasn't bad. It just, the phone was more fun. He's a funny person. We had a great time chatting. And I just recommend doing it if you're interested in them. So another pillar of interest here, like the number one most important one, I think, is being consistent and reliable. So if you're interested in someone as you're getting to know them, do things consistently. Text back consistently. Don't play games. If you didn't hear from them for 3 hours, don't text them back after 6 hours. Like, that's the game. Just be consistent, be authentic. Don't overthink what you're doing and the timing of it. You've got to show up authentically because they're going to get, if you get into a relationship, they're going to get the real you, not the game playing version of you. Being consistent also means following through on what you say. So if you say, hey, I want to call you when I get home after my trip, do it. If you say, hey, like, I'll get in touch to make a plan with you tomorrow, I'm not feeling great today, do it, right? You've got to have that follow through. And of course, you want to look for that follow through and the consistency in the people that you're dating. Another fun one is sending memes, videos, music. All these things are another way to show interest in someone. So if you are a big meme person, send them. If you love finding funny videos on TikTok, send them. Also sharing playlists is a great way to connect. These are all, I think, underrated ways to show interest that are really fun and like not super serious. Another one is taking them up on their recommendation. So if they recommend a show, a book, a movie, watch it, do it. And then give them your thoughts. That is an amazing way to show interest in someone because you are like listening to their recommendation, which feels amazing. You have more to talk about now, right? I think in early dating, it's sometimes hard to like find things to talk about. You are now bonding over something that now you've both enjoyed and can deepen your connection that way. And finally, planning dates around their interests. This is just very thoughtful. If they mention they've always wanted to try a certain restaurant or they've always wanted to do a certain activity or they're really into a specific kind of thing that you can find in town, go plan a date around that. And that really shows that you're paying attention, you're listening, and you're building a connection. These are all great and these are all fun, right? Like, this isn't so super serious. This is all low stakes stuff. Like, talking on the phone, being consistent, telling them you appreciate something little. Like, these are just very chill ways to show interest without going over the top. So we just went through all these different ways to show interest, and I want you to keep in mind that these are also ways that someone could be showing interest in you. So if you're only paying attention to how quickly they text you back, you might be missing other ways they're showing interest. So please don't ever forget that. Let's get into some mistakes that we make when showing interest in someone, okay? The first one is playing it too cool and not showing interest. This is probably the biggest mistake. If you're playing it safe because you're scared to get hurt and don't want to show interest in someone, that person is going to think you're not interested, right? Actions speak so much louder than words. So, showing interest is also how we stand out in a dating culture full of flaky people who are too cool for school. And you don't want to blend into that crowd. You want to stand out as someone who, like, oh, this is a secure, confident person who knows what they want. That is the kind of person I want to be with. So make sure you're showing up that way. Another mistake is going overboard and showing interest to get them to reciprocate. And I used to do this a lot in early dating. I used to do this because I thought the more that I did and showed interest, the more it would inspire them to do that. It was like, see what I'm doing? Do it to me. Nope, that's not how it works. The fix for this is catching yourself doing that. Like, check your motivation before you are showing interest in someone, however you're doing it. Ask yourself, am I really doing this because I want to express this or because I'm trying to get attention from them? That is that validation seeking behavior we want to avoid. Another mistake is performing instead of connecting, right? Acting like how you think you're supposed to act when you're not really in the moment or feeling that way, that's a good recipe for some mixed signals. So don't just pretend to show interest because you think that's what you're supposed to do in early dating. You need to actually feel it. So this is again comes back to being the chooser, which I talk a lot about on this show, is do you like them? Are you interested in them? Think about that before you show interest. I think this happens a lot, especially I think guys do this a lot, is kind of showing up because that's how they're supposed to and they don't want to be the bad guy, but they don't actually know how they feel about you. So they're going to just keep kind of acting like a boyfriend or acting like they're into you and then they realize they're not. That's backwards. First, evaluate if you're into someone and then show interest. Another mistake is not reading the room. All right. You don't want to fall into the trap of chasing someone by showing interest to someone who continues to ignore you, not follow through on plans, not make time to see you. Maybe they're only booty calling you or something like that. Like, that's not reading the room. Again, this goes back to what I was saying earlier about making sure you're giving them space to show you interest and paying attention to their actions as well as you go through this process. Because if you keep showing up and they keep pulling back, that's a sign that they're not into you and you should probably call it off. And the last one is too much too soon. We don't want to accidentally love bomb anyone. And I have a whole episode about love bombing versus genuine interest that I'll link in the show notes. But too much too soon is a big mistake. And I think, again, this isn't necessarily always intentional. It's just like really going over the top with interest to get to the next milestone in early dating, to get that commitment, to get them into you. That's a mistake. We want to make sure that the level of interest we're showing someone aligns with how long we've known them, not with where we want to be with them necessarily, if that makes sense. I want to get a little bit into how interest shouldn't be transactional, it should be reciprocal, right? There's a difference. So, transactional interest will feel like a trade. It's like, I'm going to text you and you're going to text me. Like, I'm going to ask you out. So then you've got to ask me out back. And I'm not going to ask you on a date if you don't do this. It's like tit for tat. It's keeping the score. You know, transactional interest, it's full of expectations. Like, if I act a certain way, then I'm expecting you to act the same way. Transactional interest is also performative. It's not genuine. It's like, I'm going to make a show of my interest to test your interest in me. And finally, transactional interest, it doesn't matter who they are. You just want someone to show interest in you back. That's how you know you are in this transactional mode, which we really don't want to be in. That is not how we're building connection. This isn't a test. This isn't about expectations. You've got to let them go so you can let people show you who they are. On the other side, reciprocal interest, you're not having any expectations. You're just expressing yourself because it's how you feel and it's aligned with what you want, which is to get to know them better and deepen your connection. Your energy with reciprocal interest is more in sync. Like, there's this awareness that they're also showing you interest back and you're expressing it because you want to. So this is more about like the interaction itself instead of what you're getting out of the interaction. If you constantly focus on what you're getting when you're giving, you are not genuinely showing interest. Yes, you want to pay attention to their actions, but you need to check in on why you are showing interest. Is it to get something from them or is it to just express how you feel? And I relate to this kind of thing to doing things around the house. Like, this is where I sometimes get into this keeping score mindset. I have to catch myself when I do things around the house, like filling the dishwasher, taking out the trash, like all the chores. And I have to be like, if I'm feeling resentment, I have to ask myself, like, am I doing this because I want to get appreciation from my husband and get noticed by him? Or am I doing this because I just need to take the trash out? And like, I have to really check with myself. And it's usually a sign that I feel like I'm doing too much. And if that's the case, I go to him and I'm like, hey, like, I need you to like step in here, So that's kind of how I relate to this whole like keeping score thing in my relationship. But I think it does apply to early dating with interest. It's like, oh, I'm texting him, I'm making plans, I'm asking him questions, but like, why isn't he doing anything? It's like, no, no, no. Just because you show up that way doesn't mean the other person will. It has to be reciprocal in an authentic and genuine way. And if it's not, you need to pay attention to that. And then you're like, okay, I'm not getting signs this person is interested in me, so I'm going to move along. Let's talk about the right amount of interest at the right time. I think there's a difference between showing interest in someone and showing love. Like, there are things I do now for Johnny, who I'm married to, that I wouldn't have done in early dating because it would have been too much. Like, for example, I give him a shoulder rub for 10 to 15 minutes a few times a week when watching TV. I also prep his lunch for him because his workday involves being in meetings for hours and he doesn't have long enough breaks. These are not things I would have done to show interest in early dating at all. Like, that would have been way too much too soon. And this isn't about wife treatment versus girlfriend treatment or anything like that. It's just that in early dating, that person hasn't been in your life long enough to warrant that type of interaction. Like, imagine making lunch for the guy you've been out with for three times. That would feel like you're doing it for a stranger. So early on, focus on the basics, being thoughtful, showing appreciation, listening, and being consistent. And make sure you're watching out what you're receiving from them. So, when I asked the Instagram community about their favorite ways to receive interest, like just to give you some ideas, consistency was at the top of the list. So, was asking me out, effort, and of course, being direct. Someone wrote bringing the 36 love questions to a date. I'll link those in the show notes. It's this like list of 36 questions to fall in love. Saying things like, I enjoy your company, bringing me flowers, driving to me for a date. That was something that someone said. Having inside jokes, listening to a podcast I shared with them, remembering my coffee order. That one came up a few times. So, another way to show interest in someone is if you know their coffee order, like maybe keep it in mind. That's really cute. Small gifts, doing love language quizzes together, that's fun. Extending our date, so that's another way to show interest. If you're on a date that you said, well, we're just getting drinks, extending it to dinner or dessert or whatever, more drinks would be a really good way to show interest in someone. Calling me, checking in often, and checking I made it home safe were also on the list. Again, so at the end of the day, these are all ways to communicate that, hey, I'm getting to know you and you matter. I'm making you a priority. I hear you and I see you and I'm thinking of you. That's what we want to show in dating. And that's what we want to receive in dating as well. I hope this helped. Again, if you're scared, I just really want you to take these small risks, find the ways to show interest that feel authentic to you, and test it out. See what happens. Maybe something really great will happen and they'll reciprocate and they'll feel so happy that you are showing interest, and then it'll be great. I want you to have this attitude of like, what if it works out? Not what if they reject me? Let's reframe it. Okay, so in the spirit of Valentine's Day, I did a survey with this incredible community that I wanted to share. It was about what women really want for Valentine's Day. And I know mostly women listen to the show, but I found the results fascinating, okay? Because flowers and chocolate are not it. I mean, don't get me wrong. I love the cheap drugstore chocolate that comes in boxes with like a cute dog or cat on them. And I told Johnny that's like what I want every year. But here is apparently what you really want for Valentine's Day. I got over 600 responses in this survey. Okay, the top answer with 26% was a weekend getaway. So that's what people really want for Valentine's Day, is a weekend getaway somewhere like an overnight. That sounds very romantic, definitely better than flowers. 22% said the best gift would be that their partner plans a night out for us. So a lot of people want their partner to plan something for Valentine's Day. You know, it makes sense, and I feel like it's almost like easier than getting a gift. It's planning something. I don't know. And 20% said that they wanted a love letter, which is very cute. So those are the top three things women actually want on Valentine's Day: a weekend getaway, a night out, or a love letter. I want to give an honorable mention to a heartfelt card at 16%, an adventure date at 15%, and they plan an at-home date at 14%. Only 1% or less said that they wanted an original song or poem or a homemade baked treat and cleaning the house. So that's interesting because I feel like a song or a poem is a very big romantic gesture that I guess very few people are actually interested in. And I was sad to see homemade baked treats get such a low percentage because I think that's such an easy and affordable gift to give on Valentine's Day, but I guess ladies don't want that. And cleaning the house, I get why that would not be the best Valentine's Day gift. I feel like that would be much more appreciated on a random day, though. Similar to like the traditional Valentine's Day gift of flowers. It's like it almost counts less on a day where flowers are such an obvious choice, and it hits harder when it's like more random and out of the blue. Anyway, I hope you found this interesting. I did. I love hearing what people actually want from their partners on special occasions. This year for Valentine's Day, tonight I'm making Johnny steak and potatoes, and tomorrow he's taking me out for an Italian dinner. I also got him a signed copy of a book that I know he's really going to love. And yeah, I'm excited. All right. That's it for me. Happy Valentine's Day again. Thank you for listening. I'd love it if you share this episode with someone who's navigating dating and might need a little confidence boost or some tough love. If any of these episodes have helped you in your journey, you can help me by leaving a stunning review on Apple or giving Dating Intentionally 5 stars on Spotify or following along on YouTube. I'd really appreciate it. Once again, I'm Talia. This has been Dating Intentionally, and I'll catch you next time.